discussion. Okay, go ahead. Oops.
So we are focusing exclusively on parents, but I'm curious whether
you're focused on parents.
Yes.
Studying parents.
Yeah. But what about other members of family or social side? I don't know whether you conducted any study or
brothers and sisters,
for example, or grandparents or friends maybe, friends. So, what role do you expect that they have in this mate choice business?
Yeah, that's completely new area of study. We have not. Yeah, we have when what's his name? Daniel Nettle staying with us, and he and I we developed a study that I wonder if we ever got to collecting the data. But that is very important. The other family members, and I can, from my own experience, mention countless stories about people who don't like the spouse of their brother or sister, or feel that their parents are investing more in them than they invest in, etc., and that their parents like more the spouse of their sister or brother than their own spouse. All these kind of things. So I think the role of siblings is very important, and also of friends. I remember a friend of mine, but when he was a lot younger than he is now, but he went to a bar in Amsterdam, and he was a very, very attractive man, and there were some. He was talking to some girls, and he was. He liked that girl, and that girl liked him, and then her friends came, and he could hear it. They said to this girl, "Don't talk to that man. He's not a millionaire." So that was a sort of example of the influence friends can have. So, for example, if you have, and I think, there are many anecdotal, and there's much anecdotal evidence that people are very concerned about selecting a mate that also is approved or liked by their friends, and can get upset when that doesn't happen, and it can lead to ending relationships and so on. So that is, I don't know and so I think that's very important to study. Yeah. That is actually already in sociology, but that's a completely different line of research already. Sociology.
Yeah.
There is, I remember Bob Milardo had a chapter on it. Network influence on the choice of partner. Sorry, you were.
Sophia? Yeah.
This is slightly unrelated, but so no, I am not completely happy with the explanation why the parents prefer the parental characteristics and the children the genetic characteristics, and so that's one thing that the parents don't want to invest so much. But so I don't think that the parents ever finish investing in their children. So there is always the option, like the last resort, that they will invest in the grandchildren. So what if we would study maybe adopted children's parents and their effect on their
adopted?
Yeah. So I was wondering if this is that their children will forward the genotype anyway, and therefore they focus on parenting. So I'm just not completely happy with the explanation, and maybe it would be nice to study adopted children.
That would be nice. That would be very nice. Yeah. But so you would expect, because there's no genetic interest of the parents in the children of the offspring of their offspring. So you would expect less parental control? Is that what you think, or
if they are adopted? Maybe.
That should theoretically should be the case. Yeah.
But why they are not interested in the genetic of the in-laws?
Now,
why?
the thing is, of course, they are. But it's a matter of. That's why we made it made this questionnaire to make the conflict, the potential conflict visible. Of course, if you ask a parent, do you want a mate for your child who is has a high social status and a good education and comes from the same religious group and looks very attractive and has a musical, artistic ability, parents will like everything. But what we focused on is what is the potential conflict. So what is more unacceptable, the low side, and then we find this. But I mean, and that's why we did it on purpose, created this scale, and I'm convinced if we had, and I think there must have been researchers who have studied it in the way like ask parents what do you find important in the mate of your children and ask the children and do not find differences. But that's why you focused on the unacceptability, and that is of course what matters in a conflict. If you come home with someone who is of a low social status or whatever, that is unacceptable, and that generates conflict.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Apostolo, he did the preferred characteristics, and there are some significant differences, but concerning, for example, the genetic quality or the health, there is like no difference between the parents' preferences and the offspring's one.
Okay. And that's slightly related that you didn't find by questionnaire any parental influence on mate choice in the Netherlands. But do you actually believe that there is no like implicit influence?
Oh yeah. The only thing is that this parental control scale has it goes from the extreme is really extreme, but still it's interesting that in the Kurdistan sample, 14% of the people say that the extreme is the parents have to decide completely on who their child is going to marry. That's so extreme, but you find cultures where that is common. So we wanted, it has, and we have the other extreme is children have the complete freedom to decide on their own. That is what in the Netherlands in general is the norm. But that doesn't mean that there's no influence of the parents. I think there is a strong influence of the parents, but not in the sense of the kind of control that is exerted in many other cultures. No. But the scale is in that sense was also developed to tap these differences between cultures. That was our purpose. We wanted therefore the extreme examples, but if you could easily develop a scale that's more sensitive to differences within a given culture. But there are here researchers who are probably can do that. For example, my parents would be coming. You have all the kind of strategies that you were talking about. My parents would be very upset if I could, and they would accept it tacitly or whatever. You can, but I know that if there's someone who has the opposite opinion here, that I am very interested in it, but I think in our culture that most people may be a little nervous when they go home to introduce the person with whom they are in love to their parents, because they're curious or concerned, a little anxious about what their parents will think. Yeah, and that may not in the end affect their decision, but it shows that there is a sensitivity, and I think that's a evolutionarily developed sensitivity to what the parents think. Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, I think I don't know. That's also something I thought that would be interesting to study. For example, in the Netherlands, it's not possible to disinherit your children. So your children will always inherit, have the right to inherit your property. But there are cultures where it's possible, and I think in the United States, for example, it is possible.
Even here?
I think it's
even here
as well.
Okay, so that would make people more sensitive to what their parents think. If you come home with somebody you want to marry who's completely unaccepting your parents, you may run the risk, and you persist, run the risk of not getting the inheritance of your parents. So that is, but that has not been, as far as I know, not systematically studied. So here it's also possible. Well, that's interesting.
It would be actually very nice to measure this physiologically, like coming to you to your parents and compare it, for instance, to your friends. Like what would create more stress?
And there's also the case. Sorry.
No, sorry, but I think we know the results now.
You had a question?
I had a point. I think frequently nowadays, at least in our country, it's the other way around. When you are introducing your spouse to your parents, you are anxious what your spouse will think about your parents. Because they'll be embarrassing. This is a complete game changer because the point is the culture, probably because the culture changes so fast, you are more culturally similar to your peers than you are to the generation before you, no matter what's the genetic relatedness.
Yeah, but still you are concerned about what your
about the compatibility, but you
are
not interested about your parents' opinion and I think maybe what's driving the proclaimed permissiveness in the Dutch sample, because they just don't want to seem embarrassing, so they take everything, or they pretend they take everything.
I think that the reason why people may be concerned about how their fiancé or girlfriend, boyfriend is thinking about their parents, it may be related to the opposite.
I'm really true.
It's your mate quality if your parents are good background.
Exactly. You are showing off that you have liberal parents, for example.
No, that is true. Yeah. Because but then it's because what you say, it says something about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you have met a nice and attractive and interesting person, you come home and he or she lives in a very poor neighborhood, and the house and the parents are sort of
ordinarily rich, and they vote for.
Yeah, but then how the parents are, say something about your future. Yeah, exactly. So that's why. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question or comment about if it is not too shortcut to call it genetic quality and parental investment, because in fact it was to me attractivity and wealth or richness, then.
No, I agree. We struggled with the right term. Yeah. But my co-worker Justin Buunk, he liked the term genetic quality, so we stuck to it. No, it's true. You're right. It's there is this movie about the father of the Williams sisters, the tennis player, who from the beginning on he won an Oscar actually. He was educating them to become good tennis players. So they developed a sort of ability that was not genetic, it was more, So I agree with what you say, but I'm open to other terms, but this is what we,
And then if we can somehow disentangle this conflict between preferences of the younger and older, say, from experiences. Yeah, what is parent-offspring conflict and what is experience? What is important in life? Say, so that you showed the differences between parents and offspring. However, these are also differences between older, experienced people and young people. Not so experienced, So if it is
it could be also cohorts.
If it could be, if it is experience that shows with age that attractiveness is not so important at the end, or misunderstanding of the subculture of younger people or something like this. If it has really this evolutionary background, or is it just learning and experience with age, say?
I understand what you mean, but I don't think if that's the case. But that the parents have more life experience and are wiser and so on.
I don't say wiser, I say different experience.
They simply lived longer.
Right, but I don't think it explains everything. No, I don't think so. Because these parents are people who also try to marry someone who had good, you would call it genetic quality, but high attractiveness, even if their parents didn't want that. So but maybe they discovered in the course of their life that was not the best decision they made, but that they should have paid more attention to the other factors. That is absolutely true.
That's what I know.
Yeah. But the way to disentangle would be to ask parents to what would you prefer for your offspring and what would you prefer for yourself, and then you could see the difference.
Yeah, that is in some what we did. The adults we studied in Suriname, these were between 25 and 50 years of age, and we asked them about the conflict they had with their parents, and they showed exactly the same results as we found with young people. So, yeah.
Craig?
My question was kind of similar, related in terms of the view of the parents. So. The fact that there's parent-offspring conflict suggests that there are differences. Somebody may be more likely to be right, and somebody may be more likely to be wrong. But sometimes there is agreement, and sometimes there's disagreement. Right? So sometimes everybody's happy. The parents love the choice, and sometimes. So my question was, what do you think is most likely? Do you think parents are better choosers for the offspring, or do you think who makes the better choice, the parents or the offspring? And I say, I mean, what I mean is that parents know their children very well. They've been observing them for 20 years, and they also see them from the outside. Outsider's perspective. So I'm just wondering if you think that maybe sometimes parents might be better choosers than the...
This is position of Indian parents, what you just said.
I was just thinking about my own family situation. When we had that discussion that when my father met my current wife for the first time, also my first wife, so he was from the beginning on completely in love with her, let me put it, to exaggerate it a little bit. That went so far that he was starting even to compete with me over her attention. But with the wife of my brother, who sadly enough died a couple of years ago, the wife of my brother, it's interesting, but he never had a good relationship with her. And my brother resented him for that, and also especially when my father was so in favor of my wife. So this relates to what we were talking about, the competition between siblings over the parental approval. Yeah, it was just comes to mind. Yeah.
Okay, I do ask, list of questions. So you nicely show cultural variation, and one of the ways, one of the factors which could explain it, at least partly, would be patri or matrilocality. So where the youngsters move after wedding. So in Europe it's mostly neolocality, but in more traditional cultures they move either to paternal side or to maternal side. And then you could expect that there would be different
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Did you observe anything like that? Perhaps you didn't have enough material.
Still in the hunter-gatherer societies that have been studied, the fathers, especially the fathers, decide and whether the people go to live with the paternal family or the maternal family. Doesn't seem to matter much. And if this would be a big factor in the United States, people often move very far away from their parents, but still we find that the parental control there is not extremely low. And in the Netherlands, because it's like the Czech Republic, it's a small country, I've noticed, a bit to my surprise, that many people want to stay living close to their offspring to help in raising the children and so on. Many people love this, grandfather or grandmother role, especially the women, and they don't want to move. They want to live close to them, and they don't like it when their son or daughter moves to another city because then they cannot care of the grandchildren. So that is. But we have the same, although we have a low level of parental control, that still is the case.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
I was wondering, besides the question I asked you in person, I will come to it later, it's just about the preferences in potential daughter-in-law or son-in-law.
Yeah.
I know that there is a study from Apostolo and maybe Pereru and Fleischmann, but anyway, that the preferences, that there are sex differences in preferences according to the son-in-law and daughter-in-law. But my question is whether you know toward which sex the preferences or the willingness to prefer them is more extensive, whether it's on the potential daughter-in-law or potential son-in-law. Because I know that there are differences in the characteristics, but I'm not sure. I don't know actually on which sex there is a higher influence from the parents' perspective.
I showed that. What I showed was that the son-in-law. I think that the parental investment and the status and so on were much more considered much more important than for the daughter-in-law.
Like overall.
But whether, in general, I would think. I can come up with many reasons why the one would be more important or the other would be more important. Because if you have a daughter, you want to make sure that she has a mate who can provide and can help and can has money and is willing to support the family and so on. If you have a son, I think that's probably less important. So I still think that people will pay more attention to their potential son-in-laws than require better characteristics of a son-in-law than of a daughter-in-law. But if a daughter-in-law, of course, is someone who doesn't want to have children, who is not good with children, who is not a nice person, blah 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 blah, that will be a big concern, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting to find out because it's also maybe it's based on the environment, according to the triggers, investments concerning the.
I can still look in some data on this we have, what you're asking. Yeah, that is.
Well, it's more beneficial to put pressure on the characteristics of son-in-law.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Right.
And the interesting thing is also, some of you may have experienced this, but I've seen it in my environment happening a couple of times, that in the first stages of their dating life, girls tend to go for the type of the very hygienic, they call it, but a very attractive, some little bit wild person, of whom they know that their parents won't like him. And friends of mine have been very upset about their daughters. In the end, they ended up with a spouse that got their approval, but in the beginning there was a sort of protest stage where they on purpose went with boys who were very attractive and a little bit wild and a little bit unresponsible, let me put it this way. Yeah.
Okay, Scott?
Do you think that the cultural differences might be at least partly caused by the fact that in Western societies, let's say, people have children later, so parents know that the partner in younger age is not like final decision, but that they can practice or whatever, and later on when the people are around their 30s or younger a little bit, they are experienced enough for their own choice. So this might be like by effect of the age of reproduction.
But that had only changed in the past 20 or 30 years or so. My mother got married quite late, but let me put it this way: in the 50s and even the 60s, people got married in the Netherlands, and I think in most Western Europe very early, when they had already seen them at 20 or 21. It's now for most people unthinkable to do that. So then you will be very sensitive to parental influence, I think. So that is changing now. So maybe if you're say 40 years old and you select a spouse, then you may be less concerned about your parents, even if they are still alive. So what is, I think, concern nowadays is that I think it's happening in the Czech Republic as well as in other countries in Western Europe, is that more and more women are not having children at all, and that's also a concern for parents. So, and we have not studied that systematically how much I've seen it around me. The parents are upset that their children want to have children and want to stay single or whatever. But that's also something important to study. But as I said, the average age of having a first child has the past decades has increased tremendously all over Western Europe.
I would guess that dowry is dowry is correlated with parental control. Yeah.
That what is?
That dowry is.
How do you pronounce it? Bride, or the other side is dowry.
Sorry,
right.
That is correlated with the parental control.
Yeah,
so is it a way how to culture based on manipulation of the parental control?
Absolutely. In countries with a high level of parental control, in India, there are often negotiations between the families about the dowry and so on. So it's a business, in some way, a business transaction. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So is it the way how to manipulate the young? Follow. If you want a partner, you will.
But by the way, Anna's data are showing similar pattern here. Like, for instance, so we had this nice investment flat for you, but because you brought this guy, there will be no flat.
That's what you found?
But I mean, like, it's a qualitative study, so we're looking forward to launch the
this is interesting.
quantitative one, because that might be very interesting as we aim to employ the DX parents and offspring.
And if they have only one flat and more children, then you have the real classic parent-offspring conflict. Then they will say, okay, no, I'm not going to give you do this flat, but we give it to our other son or daughter. Yeah.
All right. So I think we are discussing quite long, and our mouths are drying out, and I'm sure yours as well. Yeah. So you are definitely welcome to join us to next door pub, Uterus, and thank you very much once again.